Hello everybody, welcome to Documentation Not Included. It's 7 PM UK time here on twitch.tv DNI stream, and we're about to embark on episode 2.8, Breaking into Virtualization. My name's Chris, and I'm sure you can already tell Josie is not here today. She's on a much deserved holiday, and I am joined by Patrick though.
Hello, and our guest today is Josh Thorman, who's here to talk to us about infrastructure with virtualization. And you can already tell it's going to be a hard episode for me. More specifically though, how to make a jump from education into a job in virtualization. So, why not introduce yourself and give our listeners your background, Josh?
Hello, I'm Josh. I'm 25. I'm a student at Darlington College, technically Teesside University. I'm in my second out of third year for my degree in computing, degree in cybersecurity. Yeah. Lots of technicalities with it. And I specialise for the most part heavily in virtualization technologies, large storage, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, so before we start the actual show and get into the main content, we have an icebreaker. Josie will be glad to hear we are actually putting an icebreaker in today. And all this is a question that we ask everybody that comes on the show to kind of ease us into things. So I've got one today, and it's quite relevant, in fact. Dead simple. What is your dream job? And I'm going to let Josh go first. Dream job. This can be anything. It doesn't have to be IT. It can be anything at all.
I've got to say, spaceman. I could get behind that. Yeah.
Spaceman.
Yeah.
What, like, you have to be an astronaut? You mean?
Oh yeah, generally going to space, shall we say? I could get behind that if there was, no limits sort of deal.
Well, so why specifically though? Would you want to get into? I don't know.
It's more the research and pushing, seeing what people like Elon Musk are doing at the moment.
Right.
Getting people back into space. I'd love.
So you're going to be one of these? Are you going to be one of these people who take the space holiday if it becomes affordable?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or sending their fucking cars to Mars.
I loved that video so much. I rewatch that so often. It's not even funny.
Imagine how knackered that car is by now. Imagine how many bosons has flown through it, and
imagine how many miles it's got in it. Yeah, what's the resale value on that?
And dude, you know that like in thousands years, some archaeologist is gonna rediscover it, and it's gonna be in some museum as this example of early 21st century technology.
It'll be on another planet or an alien species museum, probably.
It's gonna be like, and here we can see powerful exhibit of early 21st century human religion when they constructed the image of their four-wheeled gods and sent them to forever present them in outer space.
So Patrick, what's your ideal job?
I'd say working in research and development on brain-computer interface.
Oh, nice! I like that.
That's very good. Yeah.
So that's like helping create that. Like I would fucking do it. The funny thing is that I probably could do it right now. I mean, I could start trying to get into because this field actually exists. Well, there are companies actually working on this.
I've done a lot of research on this recently because I've mentioned before I do. I'm trying to write a novel, or I haven't done anything for a few months, but I'm in the process of it, and that is one of the things as a computer brain interface in that. So I've done a lot of actual science fact research into it.
Yeah, I mean, like, even if it would be something as old school as literal plug in your nape of your neck, I would still go for it. Fuck, I would like sign to be I would test it myself on myself.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a buddy of mine's really into that, into the whole cybernetics. Why can't I change my lungs to robotic ones, and I can smoke as much as I like, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Add some filters in there.
It's not just your lungs that are a problem there, though, is it? That's
well, yeah. You can you save up your pennies, you replace bit by bit. It's like you're doing a car.
The bits that get broken as you go along.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'd love to be able to modify my retinas to see like more of electromagnetical spectrum. Like that's another thing for like body modifications. That'd be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that I didn't realize you guys were going to come up with such good ones, because mine's really boring. Mine is my ideal job. I absolutely love nature and animals in specifically like working with animals. I'd like to be a park ranger, something really simple like that, where I'm outdoors all the time. But the problem I know that's an achievable goal and it's a dream, but the problem I have is just I would not be able to maintain the same lifestyle, because I wouldn't get the same amount of money that I do doing what I do. It's simple as that.
I could totally see you though living in a forest like a forest ranger.
If I didn't have a house, a mortgage, a wife, anything, I would be a mountain man. Absolutely, live off the land. Like
somewhere in Canada or like North States, like just totally wild in the middle of mountains, when it's like 200 kilometers to the nearest human.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so shall we get into the topic then?
Yeah, let's do it. And the topic is breaking into virtualization. So, Josh, let's start with summarizing what virtualization actually is.
Oh, well, let's see, how far do you want me to keep this down?
Well, we've got an hour, so...
Well...
5-minute intro, let's say.
Okay. So, in a nutshell, it's more efficient use of hardware technology that we use. So, your average computer could run, I don't know, we'll say 20 Linux servers, in theory. By using special code, you have VTX virtualization on Intel and AMD CPUs. I believe ARM you can virtualize on as well. I haven't tried it. I'd have to cite my sources and check. Yeah, in essence, you can improve efficiency drastically by essentially having, instead of running software bare metal, you can put in containers, Dockers, you can do that sort of thing to really efficiently use resources, mainly memory.
So currently, we traditionally, when you have we buy a PC from the shop, let's keep this simple for the people who aren't into enterprise, enterprise virtualization. You buy a PC from the shop, you get an operating system on that. It might be Windows, it might be an Apple operating system. It's not going to be Linux from a shop, let's face it.
Yeah.
It's going to be an operating system. It could be a Chromebook, with is it Chrome OS? I think they call it.
Yeah, it's Chrome OS. Yeah, and that would be defined as a bare metal operating system.
Yeah.
It is. So then the operating system that the end user would use.
Yeah, so then what we have is that we've got a CPU, and the CPU is your processor on your computer, and essentially the processor has instructions on the processor, and that's where we're talking about ARMs or Intels, or I don't even know if PowerPC is still a thing, is it?
I don't think PowerPC is still going. I'm not too sure.
But yeah, so you basically have instructions on certain CPUs that allow you to virtualize and split the hardware. Now, I'm not an expert in this by any stretch of the imagination. As I was explaining to Josh before the show, as far as I'm concerned, I just provision a VM or Dockerize something with some code and some scripts, and when it doesn't work, I just go onto GitHub and complain. That's my limit of this. I obviously understand it to an extent, but that's about it. So it allows us to run multiple PCs with one set of hardware, or one clustered set of hardware as well. We could actually cluster a load of PCs together.
That's another big leap for using virtualization, is the high availability aspect of saying, we need to take that node down, it's got a failing block of memory.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, we'll just move everything to a different system. The storage is generally linked together. And yeah, you can link the storage together, as I just said, so you can provide the high availability. You've got multiple nodes, which could be spanning massive geographical locations. I could have a server in, I don't know, we'll say London, one in France. I could still cluster them together.
Right.
Even though they're not in the same physical site, due to using virtual VPNs, virtual private networks, and VLANs, virtual LANs, and all that good and juicy stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, you're really into this. And now what's interesting when I spoke to you, because we haven't, I mean, I found you, but we haven't actually spoken before today, apart from just before the show. So what really interesting about you is that you don't necessarily, you've got a few side things that you work in virtualization, but you don't work in virtualization really. You don't have a job doing that, do you?
No, not as current. But again, it's one of those things where I stick by the thing of, you're going to be really good. If you're going to be really good at something, you go all in.
Yeah. So we do it in our spare time to, all of us.
Exactly.
Do that,
yeah. You say in giant quotation marks, it's a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, I use virtualization at home. I have several servers for virtualization on because I have. Give me just one moment. I'm going to check how many systems I have running right this second.
How many bare metal boxes or how many virtualized systems?
How many virtual? So I have 3 virtualized servers out of 6. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 virtual machines running at the moment,
right?
All doing various tasks. So my router, virtual. My monitoring, virtual. I've got any version of Windows I could shake a stick at, virtual.
So you've got a virtualized router as well?
Yep, pfSense, yeah, it's all virtual. In a nutshell, you use with the use of VLANs, I bring my internet in onto a VLAN 4 in this instance. I then pass that VLAN to my router, tell it it's WAN on pfSense. I then give 3 LANs for my main network, my guest network, and my lab network. And they are all independent, they cannot talk to each other. And I've set and defined firewall rules to let certain services talk to certain services between networks.
So, speaking of different systems talking to each other, and this is like complete noob question, would virtualization also provide certain degree of security? Could that be used as a security measure?
Yeah, the benefit of using it is that it does allow for, I sell virtual systems on my personal server that I have co-located. Forno, a good friend of ours.
Yep. He's been on the show before, actually.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He buys a virtual PC from me. But it's completely isolated from every other system that runs on the physical hardware. So while he gets a chunk of that hardware, he can't access other people's. There is Lawrence Systems. They've been doing a series called How They Got Hacked. There is a bounty for breaking out of a virtual machine.
Okay.
Apparently it is possible, but bloody hard to do. You have to do some serious exploitation with memory and CPU, so Spectre, Meltdown, to try and break out of a virtual machine to get onto the host layer to then start causing mayhem.
Josie would love to talk to you about this kind of stuff. She's the Linux bod in our team. She does a lot of she's very security conscious as well, and she's extremely knowledgeable on that side of things. And she said she used to be part of cracking teams, and I don't know what she did exactly. I can't remember, but she used to be part of that. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff that would set each other challenges and things like that. And that she'd love that kind of thing. I'm sure she's heard of it, in fact.
That would be an interesting episode, man. Shame Josie's not here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do one on hacking and exploitation and even stuff like social engineering.
Yeah, well, again, she's big on that. She's big on DEF CON, and there's a few links she keeps few people she keeps sending us YouTube videos for, and so I can't even claim to be in that world. It's not something I'm security conscious. I have to be security conscious when it comes to designing my systems, but it's not something
every
I have
system.
to pursue.
Yeah, every system can be broke if you try hard enough. It's like if someone wants to steal it, they'll steal it.
Yep, and usually you're not important enough for them to try and steal it.
Exactly. Who cares about my?
I try convincing my father that's the case, that he thinks that the entire internet is after his information, his data.
That's why I don't mind about having it in some circumstances a bit lax security, especially when it comes to my home network. Oh no, someone gets to my home network, they might see me browsing Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got quite a lot of corporate stuff on my, that I covered by NDAs and things like that.
Yeah, but obviously
they're all in careful places,
Exactly. Yeah, you make use of encryption and what have you. You do the basic steps.
Yeah.
Strong passwords. I always say to people, even if you use the same password, just mix it up a bit. Throw a few more capital letters in, or do something like that just to add a bit to the complexity.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a security. what was it called? Shifting Security. We did a few months ago, and that was quite high level, basic, what you should really be doing with your passwords, what you should really be doing with your general day-to-day security, not necessarily on the enterprise.
And the general conclusion was use a password manager. And
yeah.
However that is, I saw you actually talking the other day to Josie about that. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked with security, and we're talking about virtualization and education here. So let's stay on topic.
They do kind of go hand in hand. I mean, realistically, the whole benefit of doing the virtualization is to provide extra security. I can assign you this one bit of resource. You can only see that resource. Obviously, I can see it because I own the box. I am God on the server. But you have this little resource. I can go in and check if I want to. If I believe you're doing something questionable, I will go and check.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, they're secure. They leave them to their own. Genuinely, honestly, I started off with Hyper-V back in 2008.
Yep.
I'm glad I did. It's bad now compared to Prox, which is Debian and LXC and Qualm, and there's a lot of various things that come together to form Proxmox. But then you've got VMware, ESX, which is brilliant for production until it breaks. And I don't think I know anywhere that production runs Microsoft's Hyper-V.
I do.
I can't think. Oh,
I know lots of big companies that use Hyper-V, specifically places that have Microsoft partnership agreements. You'd be amazed how the corporate world works. There's a lot of politics involved in why people use particular suites, and if they've already got a gold agreement or a partnership agreement with a particular vendor, then they're
Can I have another noob question then? What are the differences between the different between different virtualization programs? Because in the end they all can run the same sort of operating system on, right? But there you still need
and no.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So what are the differences between? Because you guys gave a huge list of different programs. What are the general differences? What they differ?
I'd say probably that stuff like Hyper-V, ESX from VMware, they do Windows virtualization top notch.
Yep.
You won't get better. Stuff like Proxmox, using LXCs, containers, that's more Linux. That's all Linux. It runs it. It really doesn't handle Windows that well. It runs it, but it's not efficient. It's the way that they work, and the way that the drivers are built, the way that the actual code for the hypervisor is made. It's just not efficient for Windows. But for nesting a ton of Linux boxes, you'd go Proxmox. If you're doing anything else, I'd probably stream towards ESX, Hyper-V, Citrix. I think they still have XenServe.
You haven't mentioned VirtualBox. Is there a reason for that?
I don't like it.
Fair enough. Hey, look, we all have our preferences. The only reason I say that is because I tend to see Hyper-V, VMware, and the various incarnations of VMware, and VirtualBox as the three main hypervisors that I've seen.
That's the only one I ever use. The one time I had to use virtual machine, VirtualBox was the one I used. So.
I mean, personally, if I'm just doing a quick bit of labbing on my desktop, I'll use VMware's Workstation.
Yep.
Just because I have it. I mean, VirtualBox is great. My Darlington College, they use it. It's good. It just works reliably. I don't really have any fors or against it. I'm pretty neutral about it. If you use it if you find that it works for you, fair enough. If it doesn't work for you, you go find whatever else. But because I mainly focus on host level virtualization, so bare metal, you wouldn't really use VirtualBox in that scenario. You'd use it on your laptop when you want to quickly lab up a Linux system or whatever else, just to prove a concept before you do roll it into production or into beta, alpha, whatever. Me personally, I don't use it. Okay. I use VMware.
You also mentioned containerization as well, which is not quite the same as virtualization. So we're talking about Docker and Vagrant.
Yeah, it works a little different. Yeah, I use LXC Linux containers on Proxmox for my virtual machines.
Okay.
Which is, I think it's got about Proxmox claim about 3% overhead of running the operating system bare metal, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. So you're getting pretty much bare metal performance 20 times over, essentially, if you had 20 VMs.
So how far have you gone with containerization specifically? Because there is a distinct difference.
Yeah, Docker, I haven't, sort of Docker and stuff, I haven't touched much. I have set up a virtual machine to play around with Docker. Recommendation of follow, funnily enough. Again, time, how it goes, time.
Docker's got a steep learning curve, and I said when we had Thorno on, he was talking about Docker in quite a lot of detail, and I've got quite a lot of experience of it, and it's brilliant for a software dev like me who needs to spin up an instance or spin up a particular app, but it's very app-centric. It's not necessarily great for running multiple services or segmenting memory and resources for a particular...
Yeah, it is. You do dedicate it to one, from what I understand, you do dedicate one Docker container to one specific task, where Linux containers on LXC, I've got SQL, DNS, web, mail, because it just acts like it's more of a nested virtual machine more than anything.
Don't get me wrong, you can run multiple services on a single Docker container, but it's not particularly recommended, and it doesn't work quite as nicely to do that. And it's more about organization of your code as well.
Go on. Being that I'm not much of a coder, that's why I haven't touched it much, because I just throw VM up.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Vagrant's even more developer focused as well. It's more about spinning up a dev environment, specifically dev. It's not necessarily a production thing. That, as far as I'm aware, I haven't used Vagrant at all, so I couldn't really comment.
Yeah, like I said, mainly my tipple of choice is either Proxmox or ESX these days. It's what I know how to fix best when it breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having problems recently with Docker trying to run services using systemctl or Docker or systemd. Inside a Docker container.
That's not ideal.
No, and it doesn't really work out of the box. You have to do some hell of a tricks to get it actually working. And then when it does work, you have to be running it by proxying the underlying Linux systemd process, which it doesn't work for me because I'm a Windows guy, so I can't. It doesn't even work. You have to essentially mock it up entirely, and I eventually just completely shelved it and ended up running a VM, CentOS VM with Docker. Sorry, with the services that were running systemctl stuff within it. I'm not a Linux guy. You probably figured that out already.
Yeah, I started one up with Rancher.
Right.
I was looking at Rancher, the recommendation of Fallout, and I just looked at it and I was like, it seems needlessly complicated to achieve the same task as a Linux container on Proxmox. The thing is, my hands are done.
All of these different frameworks, tools, technologies, they all have a very specific use case, each of them, and they expand out as more people adopt them. They expand their use case out and they put more features in and they put in more capability just so they can expand the market. That's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
You know? A VM is just an instance of an operating system. So it's a generic use case. So generic virtualization with a Hyper-V, hypervisor, is essentially just, as you said, spreading resources, saving costs, saving on backups and maintenance and things like that as well, which we haven't really touched on.
Disaster recovery is an interesting beast, to say the least.
Yes, I have actually been in a situation where an entire building had to have a disaster recovery plan, and 500 odd people all using Hyper-V virtual machines, and it took a little bit because they hadn't tested their DR plan, which doesn't, it happens unless you're in a really tight-knit company. If most people kind of put the DR plan in place and then never test it ever.
Yeah. Does it work? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Does it work today? Yes, but does it work in 2-3 months' time when we've upgraded the systems 4 times? And anyway, it did work. People got relocated to another office. Everything got spun up. It took them about 2 days to do it, but it's still 2 days rather than, damn, that building's burnt down. We've got to reprovision every single piece of hardware in there.
Yeah.
Were they doing a VDI solution, were they, for their user access?
I can't remember, and I wasn't really involved with it. It was the infrastructure guys that were doing all of that, but I was essentially a remote worker.
Yeah, that does sound like they were doing some form of Windows VDI with probably RDP or something along those lines.
Yes, like. Everyone RDP'd from a thin client on there.
Yeah, that'll be why then, because they'll go, all our client data is on the local virtual machines, not the centralized storage server we're meant to use. That's generally the big thing where it's just like, where's your data stored? On my PC. We have this 20 terabyte storage server. Can you use that, please? You know, it's. I manage, funnily enough, my dad's IT for him,
right.
And we're having what can only be described, and pardon my French, a shit show.
Right. Hey, you're basically, the first to swear. It's usually Patrick, so you're doing well.
Hey, I did it.
It is what it is. And basically, Windows has had a really weird bug with ReFS, and it basically tanks the operating system down with it. I haven't really diagnosed it fully, because I've basically just went, right, I'm just in my hands of this operating system. We're going to go FreeNAS.
All right.
Or at very least, I'm going to virtualize the system, and I'm going to run ZFS on Linux. Because I trust ZFS with the data more than I trust Windows' own file systems.
Right.
Because again, the issue of device failover, and with bin disaster recovery, I had to restore everything back from backups.
Yeah.
Luckily, I test those backups; they work. And it's just like, I spend like an entire day there, appeasing him, saying, "Look, yeah, everything works, everything's fine." Then he goes, "Oh yeah, the DNS doesn't work though, because that's on Windows Server for some reason. I did that."
Right. Okay.
It's sort of like I'm patching up a system that I installed about 5 years ago when I was very inexperienced.
Maintenance. It's the bane of everybody, to be fair. We don't all have time to keep going with production and new projects, and then also maintaining old projects. That's why teams grow, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I've got me, myself, and I just going.
Josie has this exact problem at the moment. She's got a lot of maintenance contracts in place, and she needs to get more time on her hands, or more hands, so she can do the maintenance as well as the work that's coming up. So again, she'd be a better place to.
Geez, you get that even in the game dev, like especially on hobby projects in which you sort of do it after hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because the project takes you so long, you learn so much along the way that at a certain point you just basically have to have a refactor, which was what I had to do for past 2 or 3 months. And refactor of art assets is way worse than refactor of code.
You're basically refactoring binaries, aren't you? There's no history or anything. It's just a replacement.
I mean, it's basically repainting, redoing everything. Yep. You're basically nuking shit and then doing it better. So, yeah, it's calling it refactoring. It's I understand it's a very euphemistic way of speaking about it.
Yeah.
I think whenever I do something now, if it's anything code-wise, I'm very strict about my versioning.
Yeah,
I add something once. Like, say I finish for a night of me doing something. As soon as I finish that code, if I come back to it the next day, I'll amend it, or I'll put strict commenting in saying, "This is what I've added. This is what it does. This is why I've added it. It could be made more efficient. It could be, if I'm just quickly shitting code onto a page, just for the sake of getting a script to work that I want to automate backups or whatever else on Linux.
Yeah.
I'll then go through it and filter it and start refining it. I've been going through and doing my own backups for my servers at the moment, trying to automate the procedure of versioning and automatically deleting the oldest version. And I could get some software to do it for me, but no, I'm going to do this the hard way and do it all myself.
Hey, look, that's the only way you learn. A lot of the time, I opt out of using WYSIWYG stuff or using frameworks that basically do all of the work for me. I like to understand exactly what I'm doing, exactly what I'm putting together. Now, I'm a coder by trade. I've been involved with enterprise teams for nigh on 20 years, and I've worked with I've worked with lots of different types of people. Now, it's interesting that you're an infrastructure guy, which I know it's virtualization that you focus on, but it's interesting that you are essentially a hardware guy, but you're talking about code.
Yeah.
Now, is that because of the way that things are going these days, or is that because...
Yeah, well, I mean, I think realistically, if I took over a system, if I took over a contract for a company, I'm going to have to deal with software, whether I like it or not.
Right.
If you manage the hardware, there's a good chance you're going to have to touch the software. So knowing some basic Bash, some basic... I know a bit of basic PHP. You know, I'm very much of a catch-all.
Yeah.
I like to know a bit of everything.
And so am I. I mean, I do a lot of things, but there's a distinct difference between what I would call software, or what I would call software engineering or development or design, and scripting.
Yeah. Well, see, I categorize that under software.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So I mean,
anything that doesn't require a soldering iron is soft, and therefore is a software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. I said because I've been involved in the processes and the enterprise processes for a long time. I know, how teams put proper software together. From using design patterns all the way through to full engineering processes and DevOps processes that are fully version controlled and source controlled. Now, it's still interesting that you are interested and concerned about versioning, though. Are you talking about semver versioning?
Oh no, I literally just save it as a new file.
Right. Okay.
That is my versioning.
Do you use
the
Git?
most basic.
Git.
I actually do have a Git account, yes. I do have one project on there. It's for my TF2 servers. It's a plugin that I basically...
Can I just point out a noob thing there? You just said you've got a Git account. Now, Git is a service. GitHub is a software as a service that provides Git as a software as a service. So GitHub, Bitbucket... there's tons of them. I mean, TFS and Microsoft are doing it these days as well. But Git, I've had Git on my local NAS for decades. I've been using it for maybe not decades because it's not been around that long. But I've had it on my local NAS as a personal server. So it's just a service, just a Linux service essentially that runs and allows you to push and pull code from it. But specifically, it's more about versioning your code. And when you push code, I'm understanding how it works and how the how your commits work and how you can roll back code to older versions and that kind of stuff. It's very, very robust, and it's absolutely wonderful for software developers. So
Jesus, I cannot imagine programming anything without actually using a Git. Given the amount of times when I had to look back in the past for specific file change that I've done some months ago that I have to revert now. It's just so useful.
Again, that's software to me. That goes, that goes somewhere over, the Atlantic Ocean over there somewhere. That's very rarely of my concern.
Yeah, exactly. But it is nice to know as a tool how it works. I mean, it is very complicated. Yeah. It can be extremely complicated, but it's for a software developer who it's all about the lines of code, the distinct lines. You're writing 3,000 lines a day sometimes of something that does something. It's really nice to know that all of those 3,000 lines, every time I commit that code, I can roll back. Even if I wanted to, I could roll back and cherry pick individual lines of those 3,000 lines back to a particular commit 2 weeks ago if I really wanted to. It'd be a ball ache to do that, but it is there if I ever need it. It never gets lost, and that's the wonderful thing about it. I think the one thing I would like to see, especially because I deal with Cisco devices, I run them in my own house. Okay. What Cisco devices?
Versioning. My core switch is a 3750G, which is a stacking layer 3 routable switch. Okay. I got it for a reasonable price, so I was like, okay, that's my new top of rack switch then. Well, it basically just has the house in. Yeah. But same again, I'd like to be able to have different versions of the same config, which you can do on iOS, on Cisco's iOS. Mm-hmm. But you've got to name it like that. You name it by version, so you could say you can tell it to load version 1, version 2, only if you've named them though.
Right. See,
so
I have no experience of iOS whatsoever, and we're not talking about the Apple or iOS here. We're talking about
Cisco.
Yeah, the Cisco iOS.
So I've actually recently been exposed to that because I'm currently working with Cisco IoT. Working with some fairly high-level guys over there in one of my contracts, and I've learned about their industrial-grade, environmentally graded routers, and that's what we're currently in the process of working with and provisioning for a particular solution. A very big solution. It's probably one of the most prestigious contracts I've ever worked on, and I'm learning loads. Every single day I'm learning something new.
Cisco's fun. It's
different.
Cool.
It's a different.
It's definitely something. Yeah. When I first stepped into it, I was like, "Whoa!" Where's the GUI?
I've got a good friend who I'm trying to get on the show who's a CCNA or CCNE, whatever the top one is.
Oh god, Cisco's structure's weird. You have ICND. You start off the lowest of the low is the ICND 1 and 2.
Right.
Then you go up to your CCNA, and I think it's like CCENP. Then there's.
Don't you have like CCND?
Yeah, you get specializations after the CCNA, don't you?
Yeah, you can go on to the Cisco security, and it branches out pretty wide. Because Cisco, a lot of people don't realize just how much Cisco actually do.
Oh yeah, they are innovators. They have got a lot of things going on, and said some things very NDA hush hush that I can't talk about, but that I'm talking about them with at the moment that are new and exciting, and I love it, and it's really cool to get involved with a world that as a software developer I wouldn't normally get involved with. And the reason I'm still talking about this is because it's so exciting, and it's kind of related to virtualization. We're into.
You need that back-end hardware and that back-end software to run the controllers, to run the AI. It all links so heavily together now.
Yeah.
Shit, man! Are you building some sort of like undersea bunker for the all of British security data as their server or something as a doomsday provision?
Not far off.
Cisco did demo with Linus Tech. It must have been about 6 months ago about their AI enhanced wireless and how it knows where you're wanting to go.
Yep.
It knows through your calendars and stuff like that.
I can tell you this much, that I'm working with IoT sensors that are deployed across the entire planet, and they essentially, it is, when you think about what is actually happening under the business, the business requirements, what is actually happening technically, and the amount of data that's getting gathered. I'm talking about this is data that's getting gathered like 10 times a second or 100 times a second, and then getting aggregated and processed and worked out so businesses can actually use it rather than it just be streams and streams of information. But this is all stuff that I said some of these things are getting deployed in sub-zero temperatures. Some of these things are getting deployed in deserts. So basically infrastructure related stuff. And I'm not talking about IT infrastructure. I'm talking about the world infrastructure, and it's very interesting looking at it. I said I'm really trying to skirt around the details because if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. So I can't go any further.
Yeah, let's leave the topic, man, because on big enough contracts you don't want to fuck with NDNA. That can actually bite you, and it can have serious consequences.
It can. I was actually on a call last night that was very hush hush, unannounced stuff. But anyway, right, let's move on. Anyway, so we also wanted to talk about education. Now, unless there's anything else specific about virtualization you want to touch on, because we can't go into that much detail with this. We have to try and keep this high level.
It's definitely a rabbit hole that you can, if you get bored one day, you can definitely go down, and you'll come out the other side not only smarter but efficient.
Well, I mean, I've looked at it myself. I've looked at virtual. I mean, I actually went a few months ago was considering running a virtualized server, and I prototyped all three of the ones that I mentioned before: Oracle VirtualBox, VMware, ESI, the free version of that, whatever. I think it was Player or Workstation or something.
Yeah, they have a free one that runs on top of Windows, yeah.
And then I also tried Hyper-V. Hyper-V seemed to be the most reliable from Windows 10. But I ran into a problem in that what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a VM for every different thing and then have my main workstation as like a gaming workstation, a gaming platform.
Yeah.
But the problem was I couldn't actually do all of my development work within the VMs, within the virtualized environments, because Docker does not like running inside a Hyper-V VM on Windows 10. It should do, but it doesn't. And there's currently an open thread, an open bug on Moby.
that was the same with Linux containers and Rancher that Forno was running. I think it was Rancher that Forno was running.
Yeah, he was more talking about Rancher,
he was trying to run that on top of Alpine, but he eventually had to make it into a complete VM, not a Linux container, because the way that it interacts with the operating system, it couldn't give it the right permissions and this and that, and I was like, right, okay, we'll just put it in a virtual machine and call it a day.
That's the problem I had with running systemd inside a Docker container site to go full virtual, but I'm talking about trying to run Docker inside a VM. So it's the other way around.
We had this issue. We had this issue with Rancher, trying to run Rancher in a Linux container on Proxmox.
Right, okay. I don't have any experience with Linux containers, so I don't know how they work, how they are distinct from a Hyper-V hypervisor.
Because
a container to me is a very different thing. It's not a virtualized...
Linux containers are very different to Docker containers. If you're bored, you can Google LXC. That's what Proxmox uses for its containering system, so you can run turnkey Linux.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll look into that. I have heard Linux containers being mentioned as a distinct thing previously, so I will have to have a look into that.
They are very efficient in the way they work in the resource management.
Right. Okay.
Proxmox handles RAM reasonably well until ZFS gets a hold of the damn thing.
Right.
So as we speak, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 containers on my box, then 2 virtual machines. One of them's a Windows VM, and one of them's a Forno's VM.
I literally have hundreds of Docker containers for lots of different applications. They're not always running. I tend to spin them up. I use Docker Compose to spin things up as I need them, but I deploy them to Kubernetes as well whenever. Not an internal Kubernetes cluster, basically whichever client's running it. That I deploy it to their platforms. Processes.
Docker and stuff like that is on my to learn list, shall we say?
Just don't look at it as a VM. It's not a VM at all.
Yeah.
Learn the distinction, and you'll go far. Right, we've only got a few minutes. We've actually nearly at RTFM time, but we've only got a few minutes to talk about education. We were going to try and do both subjects in this. Possibly bring you back actually if you're up for that, Josh. Talk about education.
Yeah, because virtualization is a very heavy topic. So that doesn't surprise me really.
I said I think we'll probably do that then. We'll just move on to the RTFM and
I mean, to be fair, for me, the entire episode was mostly education already. So I know about you guys.
So there's certainly some things out that I found interesting, especially that running a router in a virtualized environment. I mean, I've got a hardware router downstairs and a hardware. I've got an AP upstairs, but it's a really simple plug and play type job,
Yeah, I run within my house network. I've got the majority of the house is Wi-Fi Ethernet, so there we are. That's most of my issues taken care of. I've got 2 gigabit going from my PC to core switch, 2 gig to each server. I am going 10 gigs soon.
Right.
But that's storage infrastructure mainly.
1 gig wired for my entire house. I hate Wi-Fi. I absolutely hate it, but.
Yeah, I'm using the Unify AP Pro, APAC Pro.
Okay, what's that?
Which is a second from top wireless access point.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant, I love it. It's cheap. It's dual band AC. It's tri-band AC.
Right.
So it's pretty quick. For less than 130 quid, it's one of the best access points you can get your hands on. Especially when the competitor Cisco Meraki starts off at £600.
Yeah,
before licensing.
Networking gear is not cheap. I mean, I think I've got not a D-Link. It's a really you'll hate this. I'm going to read it out. You'll absolutely hate this. I can guarantee it. It's a TP-Link 1 gig router. Oof. Yeah, it's hideous.
Yeah.
The first one I had.
They do the job.
They do just about, but the first one I had crashed after a week and just would not work. Yeah, I had to send it back. But this one's okay. It's not crashed yet, so.
Yeah, I use pfSense within as my edge router to basically route between subnets, route between the internet,
Right.
So I've got 3 different LANs running. It's ridiculously overcomplicated.
Yeah.
But it's because you enjoy doing it.
Well, that's the thing.
Exactly.
That's the thing I said before we started the show. We were talking about I used to like hardware. I used to build my own. Well, I still do build my own PC, but I don't like doing it anymore. I haven't got the patience really. Very rarely, if I need to upgrade things, I will upgrade them. But it's something I have to build up to. Put it that way.
I think I'd say one of my pitfalls in when it comes to especially working with virtualization and stuff like that, it's when you get in a loop on something, on a problem, and you get in a loop and you get stuck by it. So like when my when the boot drive failed in my server, I was trying to recover the boot drive rather than just reinstalling and restoring from backups, because I was like, no, I will get that boot drive back.
Right.
When it would have took me, I don't know, maybe an hour to restore to essentially disaster recovery and get back online.
You see, this is something.
I'd spent like 6 hours.
This is something you learn as you get older and more experienced in the industry, that you cannot afford to spend. There's a limit, I've got so many tasks on at the moment that I have to limit myself with a particular task and go, right, I'll give this another 2 days, and then if I'm not getting any further or I'm getting blocked or something, hand it off to someone who can unblock me, or I'll have to move on to the next task and then compartmentalize, and it's something you learn you have to do, otherwise you never get anywhere and you don't satisfy your clients.
I do it with a timer. I set myself a timer for if I have a problem and I have already conceptualized, let's say, 3 different approaches, but I'm not sure yet which one will work the way I want exactly in all the specific cases. I just basically put myself a timer for implementation, and because it's mostly for the stuff that's like short, like hour, 2 hours, like small block of a larger problem.
Yeah.
So if I cannot get it to work within let's say 2 hours, then I'm just switching. This is clearly bad approach. It takes me too much time to get it perfect. So moving on.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's also different levels of perfect as well, isn't there? You can't always get something perfect, especially not in a work environment, and especially not in a production environment all the time. A lot of the time, as a software developer, you have to make concessions, and you have to say, right, we're going to have to drop the tests for this particular thing, or we're going to have to maybe implement this as a simpler algorithm and then come back to it at a later date, as long as it works. There's things that we can't drop, like security. We have to say sorry, but security comes first, especially these days.
Also, see, I have the advantage of working on. So because I'm a technical artist, I'm working basically very close to the presentation layer of the game, and in that terms, if something isn't perfect, then you're looking at millions of losses. Because if the user finds something glitchy or something, they will stop playing, or they can be it can be so discouraging that's low quality.
Yep.
And there are large enough brands riding on this horse that it has to be perfect. So I don't have actually that consideration.
It's the user experience, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be perfect. And we had delays of days because I was literally pushing some shit literally by 5 pixels. It had to be perfect.
Yeah, so, we get this is where we come back to the MVP aspect, the idea as well. A minimum viable product of something. If you're writing some software or you're implementing, I don't know, but maybe you're implementing a new hypervisor or something like that, a minimum viable product for any of that has to be at least what currently exists and then a little bit more. Otherwise, it's not viable. It's not going to sell. You're not going to be able to.
I've actually never heard of that before. So
what, an MVP?
I'll be putting that into my.
Well, it's usually used in software, an MVP. It's something that we use to describe a product. Let's say, for example, we're coming to market with a brand new social network, right? To compete in the social network environment, right? An MVP would have to be Facebook Plus, or it would have to be a cut-down version of Facebook for a very specific catchment. So people who own, I always use this example, but people who own guinea pigs, that might be a social network for guinea pig owners, and it might not be quite as fancy as Facebook, but it will be a minimum viable product that has a news feed, that has this. But a lot of the time people look at it as a minimum viable product as something that has very, very few features. but sometimes
barely functional.
Yeah, barely functional. And sometimes that's right. If you're if you're coming into a new market and you've got a brand new product that nobody else has, yes, your MVP is going to be simple and small. But as soon as you have competitors, your MVP is no longer simple and small because you're not going to get anywhere with it. You're not going to sell it, and your users aren't going to adopt it. So,
yeah, I think something that comes up with the hardware side of it is total cost of ownership.
Yeah,
I'd say that's probably the flip side of it when it comes to hardware and a network deployment. Well, it's going to cost you 150 grand, but it's going to last. You're going to be able to put a number on it saying, well, you've got 5 years of return to base support replacement on devices. You've got the licensing lasts for 6 years, so you're going to get a maximum of 6 years.
Yeah.
So you spend that 150k over 6 years. That's a good. That total cost of ownership is something pretty damn enticing right now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of people look at the big figures, and this could be for anything, hardware, software, anything in the world, but it's all about the value that they see in that. But this is a completely different show, so let's not get into this. Right, anyway, let's...
We are so sidetracky today.
Well, we've been all right, I think. We've had a few sidetracks, but we've been fairly focused, I think, today, and hopefully our listeners have gathered something from it. It's been quite different from our normal show, because normally we're talking about software development processes, but this is something that supports software. It's something that's very relevant to my day-to-day work, at least as a software engineer and as a solution architect. It's something that's very important. Virtualizing is clouds, fog networks, all this kind of stuff. Well, yeah, I know you've got a problem with the word cloud, but let's not get into that either.
I have many issues with the
You
word
can have
cloud.
that as your RTFM. In fact, let's move on to the RTFM. Joshua, do you have an RTFM? What do you hate in the world today or this week?
Well, technically two. The two terms, cloud and hackers.
Right, okay.
Because they both kind of string together in the same sense of, the original intention of a hacker would be to make something that wasn't designed for a purpose do the purpose you want it to do. That was the idea of hacking.
To hack something together, yeah.
Yeah. Where now it's just like, you run a bash script in a Linux, in Kali or something, and you're suddenly a hacker.
Well, you've guessed someone's password because it's their first name, second name, and then their birthday.
Yeah. Or you found an ion cannon exe, and now suddenly you can
oh god, I remember that thing.
And you're like, I'm a hacker.
So what?
God, that.
What have you got?
Sorry, go
what
on.
have you got with a problem with the word cloud then?
Well, as me and you've previously spoke about it, it's not really a big fluffy cloud that has everything in it. It is still a server in a data center run by a person that needs electricity, you can't get around the physical aspects of what a cloud is.
Now, I had exactly that. I'd say a month ago, 2 months ago, I had exactly that attitude towards clouds, towards the word cloud. Now, yes, to us, the techies, cloud is a cluster of servers. It's not just a single server. A lot of people misuse the term cloud to refer to a co-located server or a data center server or something, but the term cloud actually refers to a cluster or a set of servers that are all managed and provisioned, and services are provisioned via a software as a service platform. So we're talking about things like Microsoft Azure, IBM got their own, I can't remember the name of it, AWS.
Amazon Cloud.
AWS, yeah, Amazon.
AWS,
and then Google Cloud Platform. Essentially what you do there is you sign up to a service, you log in, it's a multi-tenanted solution, you log in as yourself or your company or whatever, and then you provision a server. Great example of a cloud, which is closer to the single server provisioning, or it's virtualized, is things like DigitalOcean and Linode. DigitalOcean, have you got experience of any of those?
I haven't personally used DigitalOcean. I used Vultr for a little bit.
Okay, not heard of that.
A couple of, they do small, cheap, cheerful SSD-based VPSs running. I think they were running KVM actually.
So there we are, VPSs. That's the key term here.
Yeah.
So what we've got is a platform that I log on to for DigitalOcean. The DNI website, dnistream.live, is actually hosted on a VPS, or rather on I'm not sure exactly how DigitalOcean do it, but they essentially, you go on there, you provision a Linux box, and then it's up to me what I do with it. They do have little buttons you can click to say, provision this as a Docker box, provision this as a MySQL box, or provision this one as a, I don't know, there's loads of them, Kubernetes cluster or something like that. And then you can use their UI and their platform to configure that and manage it. You don't know where that server is. You might know that it's in the US or it's in London or something like that, but that's about the limit of what you know.
Yeah, a lot of people may do a GeoIP and say, oh, the GeoIP is pointing to the UK.
Yep.
Not necessarily.
No, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's where the server is. But that's the interesting thing about it, is that it's convenience. The term cloud is convenience. For one, it's for salespeople to be able to go, oh yeah, we all host in the cloud, and everyone goes, oh cool, the cloud, yeah, great. That just encompasses billions of things. I mean, the cloud, all of the major cloud platforms have so many services available these days. I've totally lost count. I have no idea what goes on with half of them.
Yeah.
And I work with them all day, every day.
It blew up over the past, we'll say the past 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It has went. It's more pushing towards more efficient use of power, of internet bandwidth, because we are getting into that age of stuff is getting so big, it's getting so large. It's just there's so much you need to run, like a game. Like, I need to download a 60 gigabyte patch for a game, or times that by the thousands of people who own that game. You've now got
Petabytes.
60 terabytes, petabytes of data flowing through.
Oh, I mean,
so I guess cloud is good in the sense of you can distribute.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're
convenience.
oversimplifying it there again even more, because it's not just about data, it's about the provisioning of those services. So for people like us who use cloud services, I can now go onto DigitalOcean, and for an extra £5 a month I can provision a new server, and I might use that for, I don't know, anything. I could use it for absolutely anything, and I might be able to use a template that they've set up that does all of the donkey work of the setup of the server for me, But there's also things like, you can sign up to Azure, and you can create you create a tenant within a particular area of the world, within US West, Europe, London, Australia, wherever you want it to be, and then you can use their tools to entirely configure the infrastructure, and you can configure the infrastructure as code as well. So cloud as a term is actually encompasses so much these days, an immense amount of services, an immense amount of things. It's no longer just a server in the cloud. It's not just a server in a data center. So to me, it's useful.
But in the end, the cloud is still running on someone else's computer, so buyers beware. I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't go through the one company that's that's offering $0.0001 an hour virtual systems. You stay away from them. You go to AWS.
I mean, I still look for cheaper ones. I mean, as an enterprise, I wouldn't. I'd never suggest somebody using DigitalOcean or Linode unless they're a small. I've got one client in particular that uses Linode, and kind of got me onto that side of things, because they don't need
trust it.
Well, no, it's not that they trust it necessarily. It's that they don't need and don't want the costs that are associated with per minute or per second cloud provisioning. They just want to pay a fixed cost of 20 quid a month for 6 servers or whatever. It's more than that, but they pay a set amount for a set of servers, and the bandwidth and everything else doesn't matter until they get to a point where they're too big for that, and then that host will come to them and go, right, you need to start paying us more money, or you need to move to a different platform. And
that's it. Yeah, they've been able to dynamically allocate resources is very handy. Like when I was on, I'm using one for my game servers in Los Angeles at the moment, NFO servers. I've just slowly bumped up my specs based on the demand of CPU, memory. I mean, the bandwidth doesn't really change much. You get 2 terabytes as it is. I'm never going to use that.
Right.
But it is having that. I've got CDN should take up most of the biggest hits.
Yeah.
But with I've lost my train of thought now.
It's all right. Well, anyway, should we move on to somebody else's RTFM, because we are getting close to the end of the show. We try and keep this to an hour. We usually run over a little bit. But have you got an RTFM this week, Patrick?
Nah, not really.
No.
I don't have anything to really particular to rage
And
about.
I have to be honest, I'm struggling as well because both Patrick and I have wonderful lives at the moment. We don't. That makes us sound like we live together. We don't. We're in completely different parts of the world, but no. I've got a pretty good thing going on at the moment. Some things in my personal life, but they're not anything I can RTFM about. You know, I had my NHS rant last week, so I'm not going to repeat
Same.
that. So
Exactly. It's like it would be fun to be less lazy, but hey, human condition. So
indeed. So we are now at the end of the show. Thank you very much, Josh, for coming on, and thank you to everybody in chat. There hasn't been much chat today, but there has been quite a few people popping in and quite a few people staying as well. Hello to anybody if you want to say hello before we leave.
You know what? Yeah, Spooder, who is Spooder Lady, and the Twitch chat, who is my partner.
All right.
Casually dabbing. My mate Kieran in Newcastle, who I look after his crap. So yeah, there's that. And then my own game servers, moreversusmachine.tf, and my own personal website, gnome.more.
Cool.
Yes.
Oh, we were going to let you do that in a minute, but that's fine. We're going to have to alter the script slightly. But
ping whatever.
Efficient.
hey, that's good.
Ping whenever,
It'll do.
whenever you can. But you know, that's a nice segue because Josh. So what was your website again?
Gnome.more. GNOME.MOE.
That's great. And speaking of websites, there is also ours, which is dnistream.live. Where you can find links to our Discord and YouTube channels and Twitter and pretty much everything. And also a contact form if you want to contact us for any reason. Either to complain, or perhaps to complain, or maybe even to not complain, but actually show up on our show, which, you know, would be great. There is also GitHub, so if you are curious about the way our website is built by ever wonderful Chris, I don't know which way should I be pointing.
You were right the first time.
Somewhere out there. So you can actually check out Chris's code and make some nasty comments about it on github.com/documentation not included. So
excellent. So yes, we've messed this up the exit, but yeah, thank you very much, Josh. Thank you very much.
I ruined it all.
Yes, you did. You ruined everything. Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you to all our listeners, and thank you to everybody who's listening on the podcast. You hopefully will join us again next week at 7 p.m. on twitch.tv/DNI stream, and that's about it. Oh yes, you can follow us on Twitter as well. Twitter @DNI stream, and we'll. We post stuff about the show and this and that. Next week, we have a guy called Mark Walsh, who's a person I used to work with a while back. He is a tech lead / senior developer / all-round pretty awesome developer. He was a junior when I worked with him, but he was already great then, so I'm sure he's much better now. Who works at a tech startup, and he wants to come on and talk about tech debt. Specifically tech debt in software code. So hopefully you can join us then.
That's going to be a painful conversation.
It is. Well, that's going to be interesting for you as well, Pat, I imagine, because you'll have a little bit of tech debt in your area of the world.
I cannot confirm or deny that.
Or maybe you can talk about previous tech debt with previous projects.
Oh God, yes.
I know I definitely can, but I'm very lucky in that I don't really get involved in tech debt that much these days.
Yeah. You know, there are some things which were passed down through generations on the stone tablets. And this is said to be the original source code of some of the projects I was working on.
Sometimes it feels like that, yes. Right, so yes, thank you very much, everybody. We shall catch you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.